everyone, welcome to our yet another video in this beautiful mini series that we have put together for all of you. And today we are going to be diving into the filters of our mind. We wanted to bring you a video explaining how your mind really functions so you can start to separate between your unconscious and conscious decision making, thought patterns, behaviors, and actions. And why we are doing this is because having an understanding of the main filters that impact your decision making and reactions will help you switch how you manifest things in your reality. So I'm going to now ask Beck to give us a little intro on what these filters are, and then we are going to dive into each one of them individually for you. So Beck, do you want to walk us through the basic introduction on filters of the mind?
Thanks, Parul. Yeah, I'm just going to bring a presentation up here because I love demonstrating with a slide. So I just want to make sure that you can see our Homer Simpson slide there, Parul. Also, to give you a very, very quick overview of the filters of the mind, we have so many things happening in our day every day. So an event happens, something happens, we experience something. And anytime we experience something, there's actually 2 million bits of information coming into our mind at once, which is a huge amount. And you can imagine this is happening time after time after time, like many times through the day. So these 2 million bits of information come into our mind through what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, all of our senses. Right, but our brain can't actually manage 2 million bits of information. It's too much. So what it does is it filters all of that information for us. What it does is it deletes, distorts, and generalizes information. So some of the information we don't need, or our mind decides that we can't take that on. It will distort information, which explains really well why 2 people can be at the exact same event or experience the exact same thing but have a different memory of it. And then it generalizes. So based on our filters, we will generalize information. So this will make a bit more sense when we go into more detail in a moment.
I just wanted to say that it's so cool what you just mentioned, that we, based on our filters of the mind, each one of us, like 2 people witnessing the same event, can have a completely different perception and take away from that event. And I think that is truly the power of how our individual filters determine why 2 people can have a completely different version of an event and the reality, experiencing the same things, right?
Absolutely. And that's why when you know this and you understand this, so many things start to fall into place. They start to make a lot more sense.
Brilliant.
And so these filters, they do what they're called. They filter information down. So you actually go from 2 million bits of information per second, and it filters down. It spits out down to about 134 bits approximately. So 2 million to 134, that is the power of your mind. And it's doing it like that, right?
Yeah, like
less
than a second.
Yeah, exactly. And it works for us and against us, right? I mean, it's working for us. Our mind is making this decision on our behalf because it's saying, Parul, you can't possibly cope with these 2 million bits of information. You would be in complete sensory overload if you had to process all of that. So it's doing us a favor by helping us, by filtering this information. But it is also working against us because it's making decisions on our behalf of the information that we're going to take in and how we're going to respond to it. So that's my dog in the background. So it is working against us as well, because really we want to be in control of our mind. And again, that's why it's really important to understand how this works.
Yeah, and it's so powerful. Instead of working on autopilot and just letting all of these things impact how we're acting, behaving, and, randomly whatever, living our life, to then become consciously aware of these things and start to modify and switch them to how we want results to show up in our life.
That's right, because this is our unconscious working. I think we've talked about that a little bit in previous videos, but that's our unconscious working, and we can consciously make changes to these filters. So I'll just run through and show you what these filters are and then what the outcome is, and then we're going to go through some of them in more detail. So these filters, in no particular order, but we have language, attitudes, memories, decisions, meta programs, values, and beliefs. So all of that information comes into our mind. Our mind filters the information through all of these filters. It's all happening all at once. And then that comes out in an internal representation. So it's what we then perceive this event to be doing. It creates a state within us. So, when something happens to us, we feel a certain way, we think a certain way. So that comes out in our physiology, and that ultimately creates our behavior. So the way to explain that very simply, I guess, is something happens and we respond or we react. But between that event happening and our response or our reaction, all of this is happening in our mind, based on these filters that we've created. And so we're going to go through, I think, the top 4 in this particular video. So Parul, do you want to kick off with language?
Yeah, totally. And thank you for taking us through that, Beck. I mean, just looking at this slide, I know this information, but even like just re-looking at it, I think it's fascinating to see that we have 2 million bits of information coming into our mind during the day. So imagine how much sensory overload that is. And then our brain is epic in the sense that it's like chopping all this information, and then we instantly see something, hear something, have feelings about it, and feel a certain way, and our body reacts to it. So you can imagine how powerful our brain is. And just for the sake of making it simple, just so you can retain what we're talking about, today we're only going to be diving into the top 4 filters, which are language, attitudes, memories, and decisions. And even just understanding these top 4 filters will really help you switch how you act and think about things. So let's start with language. Now, language is one of our biggest and the most important, change effect mechanisms. So often as adults, how we talk to ourselves is governed by how we were spoken to as kids. Because when we are young, when we are up to the age of 7 years old, we are largely working in our unconscious mind, unconscious realm. So however we were spoken to as kids, if that language was critical, it put us down, it made us doubt ourselves, it made us sit in a state of confusion, we are going to carry that language to the rest of our life unless we make a conscious decision to start to switch it. And likewise, even beyond 7 years, because we're still quite tender and we're open to receiving lots of information from our parents, caregivers, teachers, it still keeps on affecting us till at least the age of 21. So now you can imagine that 1/3 of your life has, you've spent 1/3 of your life thinking, hearing, and feeling a certain way. So those things are naturally going to affect how you talk to yourself. So to give you an example, now let's say if you are very self-critical and, if you often call yourself dumb or slow, or, you're used to telling yourself that, oh, Parul, you're not good at anything and you're just dumb and you're slow and you're going to mess this up, or you're too short and no one likes you. So if this is the program that's going on in your mind the whole time and you're repeating this to yourself again and again and again, you can imagine that you're not going to be able to show up differently because, well, this is what you believe and this is what you're telling yourself. And so this is how you will show up in life. While now, if I start to switch this language and I am constantly telling myself that I'm amazing, I'm doing the best that I can, that I can learn anything I put my mind to, people love me, I am a beautiful, friendly, loving person, then automatically, that's the physiology that this filter is going to create inside my body. That's how I'm going to show up in life. And that's how I will have those kind of positive experiences. So, Beck, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, I there's one example that I love to use with language, and it sort of puts what you said into context, which is so true. And it's almost like that use it or lose it kind of thing as well. You know, all of those things that you were just saying, if you're using that positive language about yourself as opposed to the not so good language, then obviously that's going to create a positive effect in your life. I talked at the beginning about how our mind deletes, distorts, and generalizes information. So here's an example of how your mind might delete information based on a language filter. If I'm to say to you, je ne comprends pas, right, in my terrible French accent, and you don't understand French, you don't know what I just said, right? So your mind, it heard the information, but it will not retain it because it just goes, Parul, you don't speak French, so I'm not going to keep that information. And so it deletes that information.
Yeah.
So that's that part of deletion, distortion, and generalizing. So that's why the language that you use is really, really important, because if you are not understanding, if you're not believing that language, then it's just going straight out the window.
Totally. And exactly that. When, you know, it's also not as simple as just flipping the language and then that's it, everything's rosy, because you have to make it a consistent effort to switch it. And that effort has to be 100 to 1,000 times a day. Pretty much every time you start to switch into that state of self-critique or that state of not feeling so good about yourself. And that's when you start to flip it and choose to talk to yourself differently. And you do it every day and you do it consistently. So then that's the new filter that your brain starts to understand. And that just becomes an automatic part of that's just how you talk to yourself. And that just becomes your new normal.
That's such a good point, Parul. I really like that you brought that up. And I've been editing some videos over the last week of some of my clients who have given testimonials. And the common thread throughout those is they've all said, it wasn't easy, it took work, but the payout at the end is so worth it. So, you get out what you put in. It's like absolutely anything. If you want to run a marathon, you could give a half-hearted effort. You could go for a jog down the road every other day. You could buy some average shoes. You could think, oh, well, if I get to the end, that's okay. If I don't, that's all right. You're going to get that result. Okay. You're going to get a mediocre result. You probably won't finish the marathon, but if you put the effort in, you work on a training plan, you work with a partner, you consistently increase your goals, you've got the right shoes, you've got the right mindset, you're going to smash that marathon. So I love that you brought that up. It's not as simple as going, yeah, well, I'm going to think positively or I'm going to use different language. It takes time. You need to create habits. You've got to use tools around you. You are going to have bad days. You're going to have days where you think, oh, well, I totally didn't do anything that, I had set out to do, or I know that I've been talking to myself negatively, and that's okay. But it's about resetting and just keeping those consistent habits up.
Totally. It's your commitment to yourself. And just like anything else, right? Like, you're not going to get the result when you go to the gym once a week. So it is about consistency. It is about the commitment to yourself. And it is about just that desire to make that change.
Absolutely.
All righty. So let's dive into attitudes, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to explain this one pretty simply by just saying, have a think about any time that you have tried to have a conversation with someone about something really positive and really upbeat, and they are not in the mood. There's just every comeback they have is negative, and they'll find the negative for every positive that you're saying. It's really hard to have a positive conversation with a negative person. That's a really simplified way of explaining your attitudes. It is your attitude toward things. So if you are consistently a glass half empty kind of person, or what you might describe as a pessimistic person, that's your overall attitude. And very simple, well, it's the same as what Parul was saying about language. These attitudes are formed in our early years, about the attitudes of people around us, our caregivers, the people that we spend the most time with. If, on the other hand, you're more of an optimistic person, a glass half full kind of person, all of these cliches, I guess, that we use, then you are typically going to see the lighter side of life. You are going to see the opportunities in life. And this is where this attitude is super, super important, because we're all looking for opportunities. I don't like to generalize, but most of us want to grow in life. We want to improve our lives. We want to be better than we are, not in a I'm not good enough way, but we're consistently learning and growing. So this is where that attitude filter comes in. When the information comes in, depending on your go-to attitude, that's where your mind is going to take you.
Yeah, and thanks for explaining that, Beck. And I would just like to add that, just like anything else, right? It's so how should I say this? It's like, again, your attitude doesn't have to be something that's set in stone, because that's just how you're used to being. So, like, I've had some clients say in the past that, oh, that person is just a glass half full person, and that annoys me, and they're just super positive. So what I'm trying to say here is that it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, you don't have to be glass half full or glass half empty. You can choose to start to flip how you are reacting to things. And it's not that someone has always been like that, they are like that, and hence they have a good life, and hence they're always positive, and blah blah blah. It basically means that you can also make a conscious choice to flip that glass half empty narrative into seeing the positive in a situation. And that's where practices like gratitude come in, practices like meditation or journaling come in, which make you thankful for what you already have. They make you see the abundance in your life. They make you see the goodness that's already around you. So once you start to, again, switch into that filter, you will see how your outlook to things also changes.
Yeah, that you hit on a couple of really good points there, Parul. Thank you. One thing you said there was a couple of times was choice. Okay, it is our choice. It is our choice to make a conscious decision. I have a client who, generally they thought of themselves as a very optimistic, positive person, but they were finding that in so many situations they were being negative, they were being pessimistic. Now, this had a lot to do with a lot of the other things that had happened to them in their life. There had been a lot of trauma. There had been some very negative incidents. And once we were able to deal with those, that helped flip this attitude filter. So you're exactly right. It's not just one or the other for all things all of the time. There are certain things in my life that I would say, yeah, I probably do have a bit of a negative attitude toward because of certain things that have happened. It is my choice to do work to be able to flip that, and it's an ongoing journey. And you also talked about making that decision about how we look at certain situations. And I've got I think quite a powerful and a personal example of this. I lost my dad when I was 16. He died of cancer. And at the time, that was the worst thing that could ever have happened to me, to my mum, to my brother, to my whole family. And for a while, it had a huge impact on all of us for a very long time. I look at it very differently now. And trust me, it's taken a lot of work. It's taken a lot of years. But I can now look at that and say, as horrible as that was, and I wish that it had never happened. I would love for him to be alive these days. But there's also a lot of positive things that have come out of that. You know, I was 16 at the time. I learned a lot from that experience. And with, you know, the wisdom of time, I guess I can look at it differently and say I was taught resilience. I was taught empathy, compassion, independence, you know, a lot of the things that it led to.
Yes.
There's a hugely positive impact there. Now, I could just choose to look at that still as a horrible thing that happened in my life and, you know, not be able to take anything positive from it. But I choose to look at all the wonderful opportunities that came my way because that happened as well. And it's not about forgetting what happened or not respecting the person who has died. That's simply my choice that I'm going to look forward in life. That's an attitude.
Totally. And oh gosh, thank you so much for sharing that, Beck. It's thank you for being so open and vulnerable with that example, because it's a big one. It must have been so traumatic for you as a child and for your whole family. And it's one of the hardest things that can happen to us, right? And when we are young, or just, I guess, losing a parent is, yeah, it's just one of the things, the top traumatic things that can happen to us as individuals. And so then choosing to flip that attitude instead of sitting in that victim mindset or that blame mindset, or not taking any action because something happened to you and now you feel helpless in this situation, is exactly what we are talking about avoiding. And that's exactly what you did. So you're really truly leading by example here. And if anything, if anyone, like whoever's watching this, it's such a good example for them to then go and pick any situation in their life to really just take control of it, right? Like whether small or big. This example is such a great demonstration of how we have the power to choose how we shape our life. We can either sit and dwell on something, or we can choose to see the power, resilience, strength, growth, emotional stability, like all of these things in the worst of situations, and come out of it and say, well, what did this teach me? Yes. Who am I becoming because of this? And how can I use this as a springboard to jump onto something else bigger in life?
Yeah.
And it won't be easy. It would be hard. We are here to hold you through that if that happens. We've both had our own set of traumatic events in the past. I also lost my mother when I was 11 years old, and I was living in blame for a while. I used to sit and talk to God about, well, why me? About a couple of things that had happened in my life, till I chose to then flip that narrative and take complete control of how I wanted to show up and what I wanted to learn from that, and how that had shaped me as a young girl and now a woman. So it won't be easy. It will be consistent work, but these are the things that'll shape you and give you power to show up however you choose to and however you want to in life.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that, sharing that also, Parul.
You're welcome. Okay, also, sorry. Should we now dive into memories then?
Let's do that.
Cool. All right. So I'll just begin by saying that, very similar to what I was saying about language, our memories are a collection of the events that we have experienced in life. And often a lot of the unconscious behaviors in our memories will be coming again from those first 7 to 10 formative years when we were largely operating in our unconscious mind, when we were largely just like acting like sponges, little sponges, absorbing everything that was happening in our environment with our caregivers, with our guardians, with our parents, everyone around us. So these memories, and we won't be aware of these things as adults, because how we act in life is simply on autopilot, unconsciously behaving in similar ways that we did in a situation that was potentially traumatic, potentially threatening, and then we continue to repeat those patterns, acting in similar ways based on our memories, till we choose to flip them once again consciously. And an example of this would be, let's say you expressed yourself as a child, right? And for some reason, maybe in all good intention, you were shut down by your parents. And from that experience, you learned to not express yourself. You learned that if you express your needs, express your desires, speak your mind, if you're being completely yourself, you are basically being shut down, making your parents unhappy, and hence they will not like you or love you. So that becomes then a memory in your mind. And what will happen is that now every time you're in a situation that requires you to express yourself, that requires you to be yourself, speak your mind, maybe that's in dating, maybe that's in a new job, you are going to be overcome with that fear of being shut down, or that memory of not feeling loved in that instance when you chose to speak your mind. So you are unconsciously, automatically going to suppress that desire. You're not going to speak your mind. You're going to play small. You're going to keep hiding. And that's going to keep happening in your life till you become aware of this pattern and choose to act the other way. Now think about it. Like something happened, and maybe that happened again in your childhood or your life. And so then you just kept on reacting a certain way. And it's not your fault because you didn't know any better, because you didn't have this education. So then you kept reacting like that for, let's say, 30, 35, 40 years of your life. And so now that's become a muscle memory, and that's just become your autopilot reaction. So now when you hear this, or when you become aware of it, it's not going to be easy to also, again, flip this in one go. But awareness is where it starts. So now you become aware of, well, what can be going on, what is potentially going on inside your mind, inside your body, in your physiology, that you're reacting a certain way. And from here, you can start to flip it. But again, just like it's taken you 30, 35 years to make those memories, to react from those memories, it might take you a little bit of time, not 30 years, but like a couple of years, a couple of months to flip those memories and choosing to act differently, and potentially being brave in facing that fear and being brave in acting differently. So once again, just want to emphasize that these things have impacted you over the years, and these things have been working in your unconscious. So becoming aware of them is really a massive, massive step. And once you become aware of them, the power is in your hands to choose to change them.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can just finish this one off, Parul, by relating this also back to this language, not the filter, but we've talked a lot in this series about language and the importance when that experience has happened and that memory is formed, and then we continue to feel that certain way and we're reacting a certain way because of that original memory. This is when we generally start to tell ourselves certain things. And when we talk about language, it's not just obviously the language that we use to speak, it's our internal language as well, which we've talked about. But in that scenario, it might be internally telling ourselves, I'm too loud, or nobody likes it when I speak up. And then we actually start to tell other people that kind of thing. Oh no, I'm always too loud, so I'm just going to sit back, or I'm not going to express myself. So it's that language, it's internal, then we tell other people. And the more that we say this internally and externally, the more we believe it, which then comes into the beliefs, which we're not going to go into today, but you can see how all of these things are very intertwined.
Oh gosh, totally. Yes. Okay, I'm going to stop there with memories, because again, can keep talking about these things forever. And it's such a good back and forth, between Beck and I, to talk about these things, because we absolutely love this work.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to decisions, our last filter for today. And I would love for Beck to just dive into this one a little bit for us.
So talking about decisions, I'm somebody who likes to use an example to explain these. That's how my mind works. So the way I like to look at this with a decision, an example for this is somebody who chooses taste over nutrition. So somebody who makes a decision to choose taste over nutrition is going to potentially choose foods maybe to the detriment of their health, because it's all about how it tastes to them and the experience they get from that taste. Whereas somebody who chooses nutrition over taste is the person who perhaps is going to make healthier food choices. They're going to learn to cook with spices to improve the flavor and improve the taste in things, because perhaps the foods they're choosing are a little bit more bland, but they still want that taste. But they are making the decision to choose that because of the output they want, what their value is about having a healthy mind and body.
Yeah, totally. I think a big one would also be time and money, right? And I would just like to say that decisions are such a big one because, it's like we move through life thinking that we don't have the power to choose wisely or to make the decision that will make us feel good. We think that, we're governed by all these external circumstances on, I don't have money, I don't have time, I don't have this, I don't have that, I'll do this tomorrow. But really, again, all of these things are being governed by other filters, plus us choosing not to make that wise or tough decision sometimes. Yeah. So a good example of this could also be choosing time over money. I have some friends who love being creative, and for them, their time or their creativity is more important than making money. So they're choosing to then spend their time doing things or, spend it in a way that is not helping them make a lot of money. So now over here, we can talk about another point, which is values, which I won't get into. So maybe for these people, it could be that they value their time and creativity and play more than money. But what I'm trying to say is that either way, they're choosing to make a decision where they're valuing their time over money, or vice versa. For some people, like for my ex-partner, for example, money is a top value. So his decisions are often based on prioritizing how is he maximizing his time to make more money versus taking the time out to play. So you see how in both these examples, there are two different individuals and they're choosing different things, and they're making the decision to either focus on their time, either focus on creativity and play, or focus on money.
Yeah, really good example of that. And I think this is one that comes up a lot. We hear constantly, I mean, I've heard myself say, I don't have time for that. You're very right. That ties hugely into our values, which we'll go into in another video. But I do, the time versus money, the taste versus nutrition. Ultimately, what we're saying is that it's making that choice, it's making that decision around something that's that particular filter. And that will be based, again, on the values and the beliefs that we were brought up with in that imprint period.
Totally. And another example, if it helps simplify things, would be, exercise and time. Often we choose comfort over moving our body. And that can, again, be tied into the belief that you don't need to exercise, or the value on how much you value your personal health and body and exercise, nutrition, etc., over being comfortable over other activities. Like for me personally, exercising is a huge value. It is high up. Taking care of my body is high up in, my list of priorities. So for me, the decision to focus on my exercises versus socializing is an easy one, because I know that I prioritize my exercising first and then I go out and socialize. So if I haven't done that X amounts of time in a week, I'm not going to give up on that and go out every other night of the week. That's it from us for today. We really enjoyed diving into these 4 juicy, awesome filters, because truly, trust us, if you start to break down, truly understand and break these downs day to day, you're going to start to see massive shifts in your life. And the amount and the way you will show up and the way you will start making decisions will be very, very transformed. So we are excited for you to take a bite out of this, implement some of these in your life, and connect with us and tell us how you found all of this information. And that's a wrap from us for today, unless you want to add something to this, Beck.
No, just thanks again for watching. We do love getting your feedback. And of course, if there's any other topics that you're interested in having us explain or debate or just chat about a little bit more, we'd love to hear from you. So thanks, and we'll see you in the next video.
Amazing. Alrighty. See you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.